Yo, what's up, everybody? I am back. This is Danny Segura, reporter for MMA Junkie, and my 2026 YouTube channel return continues. So, in this video, we'll be talking about the UFC 325 main event, a rematch between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes for the UFC featherweight title. We won't really be talking about any other fights, and I don't know why I say we. I won't be talking about any other fights. Mainly just going to focus on the main event because it's really everything about this card, right? The other fights are very fun. Some are even better than some of the fights we saw at 324, at least on paper, but they're not consequential. They're not number one contenders or anything like that, right? Maybe the winners can go on to have consequential bouts, but for the time being, it kind of doesn't feel that way. If you guys have any questions about it, I'll address them in the comments, and maybe at the end I'll just glance over some of the fights. But mainly I want to focus the talk on this video around the UFC 325 main event. All right, so let's get into it. So we got a championship rematch between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes. This fight, as I mentioned, headlines UFC 325, which goes down in Sydney, Australia. These two fought a little less than a year ago. They fought in Miami in April of 2025. I was actually there in person covering that fight. I was there cage side witnessing. Very, very good fight. I think in person it looked a little bit more competitive than it did across the TV. I know online a lot of people were saying that, it was fairly one-sided, but watching it live, you did get a feeling that Diego was in the fight and was dangerous the entire time. But either way, I mean, I don't think the first result is debatable, right? Diego Lopes came up short. Alexander Volkanovski took home the unanimous decision win, and it was a pretty good scoring on that end. We're seeing here that in the rematch, Alexander Volkanovski, as expected, enters as a favorite at a minus 154, and Diego Lopes as the underdog at a plus 120. I am a little bit surprised that the odds are as close as they are. Usually when it's a rematch, especially in such close proximity to the first fight, you would expect the odds maybe to be a little bit more, I don't know, more bigger, wider, right? Given the fact that Volkanovski already got the job done and he did so less than a year ago, right? So what, usually in a year's time or less than a year's time, there's not too much to work with, too much to change, right? So usually you would think a fight would be the same way. But I totally get also why, even though I'm surprised, I do get why the lines are that way, right? Also, Volkanovski hasn't fought since, so maybe there's some ring rust there. There's the inactivity factor. And on the other hand, Lopes did fight, and he looked spectacular against John Silva. He put on one of the best fights of the year and also got one of the best finishes of the year with a spinning elbow. So, surprised, but I also get why the lines are the way they are. Now, before I go into the bout itself and analyze it and give you guys a pick here, I want to talk about each fighter individually. So let's start with the champion, Volkanovski. He's in an interesting spot, right? This is his first title defense of his second reign at 145 pounds. I think at this point in time, the talk of who's the greatest featherweight of all time has kind of died down. Usually that kind of rises when somebody is on a streak. Obviously, Volkanovski isn't. Prior to the fight against Lopes, he had lost twice, once to Ilia Topuria and the other to Islam Makhachev. So it's died down. But to kind of just put a bow on that conversation, look, I think it's got to be between Volkanovski and Aldo. I think Max is already out of that conversation. I think Ilia could have been in that conversation should he kept defending the title. I think we would have kept having it. But the fact that he moved up to lightweight, it also killed that conversation. So I think it's a two-man race here. And so far, at least historically wise, I've always had Jose Aldo as number one. But I think at this point in time, I'm ready to say that it's Volkanovski, especially if he's able to defend the title, because he already did something that nobody has done in the weight class, which is lose the title and come back and get it. If he defends it, again, it'll just further that comeback, which is very impressive. It's very hard to do. So I think at this point in time, at best, you can call it a tie for Jose Aldo. And if he defends this, obviously talk about Volkanovski here, I think he's got to be the GOAT at 45, right? Yeah, tough fight for him. He's 37 years old, turns 38 in September. He says he's not ready to retire. He's not talking about retirement. But you have to wonder, like, he's got to think about that, right? 37 years of age. He's put his body through a lot, years and years of competition. The division's only getting tougher. Look at the contenders behind Diego Lopes. So I do think at some point in the near future he's gonna call it. Will that be after this fight? I don't think so. I think he can probably log in this fight, another, and then that's when he gets into a territory of the unknown, right? Maybe one more. I can see him do 3 at most, but will he do 4 or 5 fights? I really doubt it. I think he does this one more, and then after that, you know, it's just a guessing game at that point. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be around the sport for much longer. Give it a year, year and a half at most. And also, I think depending on how this fight goes, it'll either prolong that or have it be shorter. No, depending if loses brutally by knockout or if he gets a swift first round knockout victory, right? I think obviously that has an impact on things. On the other hand, you got a Diego Lopes who is certainly in the best moment of his career. I know not so long ago, a year ago, he had lost to Volkanovski, but in totality, I mean, the dude's in his prime, and it seems that there's still a lot of prime left. He's looking very, very good. Um, I understand the whole criticism around him getting this title shot and all that. I do think that if you're mad or upset at this, it should be directed at the UFC. They're the ones who make the decision. Lopes just fought, and he just so happened to get a title shot, right? And in this game where title shots don't really come very often, anytime they offer you one, no matter if there's another deserving contender or more deserving contender, you have to take it, right? At the end of the day, you have to watch out for your own pocket and your own career, your own legacy, and all that. So, again, no fault at all for Diego taking this fight. But again, if you have any sort of issue, I think that's more to blame for the UFC. And certainly there were more deserving contenders. I think both Evloev and Murphy, I think sporting wise, deserved the fight against Volkanovski more than Diego Lopes. However, I do think the claims are a little bit exaggerated. I do think that Diego is a deserving contender, not the most deserving, but a deserving contender. And I think because it was paired with the whole UFC interim lightweight title fight being, just a week ago at UFC 324, I think it kind of just built this cloud around the UFC of like, hey, they don't care about merit, this and that. And Diego kind of got some unfair criticism on that end. I think this fight is fine. If you look at the other people's situations, sure, Lerone Murphy's undefeated, 19-0, spectacular KO, which I think he should have gotten the title shot. But he also beat an Aaron Pico who is not in the UFC rankings, who's not, in my opinion, one of the best 10 fighters in the world, at least for now, at 145 pounds. And he was debuting in the UFC, right, which obviously comes with a lot of pressure and a lot of difficulty. So what do you put like way more? A victory over a knockout win over Aaron Pico, who's been knocked out before, or a knockout win over John Silva? In my opinion, a victory over John Silva has more weight, more value. And on Evloev, yeah, he beat Aljamain Sterling, but the dude hasn't fought in a very, very long time. So if we just look at the most deserving contender in recent times, like right now, last couple fights, last few fights, what's going on? I mean, you could make an argument that Diego Lopes win over John Silva trumps the inactivity of Evloev and trumps the victory over Lerone Murphy. Now, we already saw this fight, so I get that. That's why I also think it should have been Lerone Murphy. But anyways, we're already past that. The fight's happening. There's no, you either watch or don't watch, how Dana White put it. But yeah, just quickly wanted to mention that because obviously it's been a big topic of conversation around this title fight. And for Diego Lopes, man, something I don't like is, one, he's getting the rematch in less than a year. I don't know how much you can change in less than a year. Some fighters are able to do big adjustments, but most of them, I would say, are only able to do smaller ones. And I don't know if smaller adjustments here necessarily get you the victory against Volkanovski. Maybe they do. We'll see on Saturday. I also don't like that he faced John Silva. He didn't face a Lerone Murphy or a fighter that kind of counters or has a similar style to Volkanovski, so he can prep for that fight. It's literally a completely different style. Literally, I would say the opposite from Volkanovski. So on that end, he didn't have the best sort of preparation in terms of getting an opponent that could get him ready for Volkanovski. But either way, he's here. He's not a bad underdog, and he's as dangerous as ever. The dude has knockout power. He always comes in shape. I think the cardio questions that once existed um, due to that Dan Ige fight kind of went away. I'm not saying he's a cardio machine, but at least the concerns are no longer there. Dude can fight 5 rounds. He proved it against Volkanovski a year ago. And again, the power is there and the submission skills are there. So all around a very, very dangerous fighter. I would say in terms of all around skills, probably the most dangerous fighter in terms of his ability to finish in at any point during the fight. I think he's the most dangerous fighter in the featherweight division. Now let's chat about the fight a little bit, man. This one's a tough one. I've gone back and forth, and with some, obviously there's no such thing as a lock, but there's such things as a semi-lock. Like, it can be very confident in a fight, be like, hey, I think this is the way it's gonna go. This one, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. If you want to go with Volkanovski, that's fine. If you want to go with Diego Lopes, I think that's fine as well. I think there's good arguments to support both cases. But here's where I stand in terms of how I see things, and I guess to show you a little bit the inside of my indecisiveness here in this fight. Look, I don't think Volkanovski at this stage in his career has the power or the submission skills to submit Diego Lopes. So I think if he's going to win, it's going to be a decision. That's his only path to victory. Very similar to what happened in the first fight. Right? Volk is not a finisher. Diego's tough as shit. He's got a great chin, great jiu-jitsu, defensively as well, not only offensively. So if this is going to go 25 minutes, Volkanovski is going to win this one. But within those 25 minutes, we know, again, as I mentioned, that Diego Lopes is extremely dangerous. Diego Lopes 100% has the tools to finish Volkanovski, say by submission or via knockout. But will he, right? How big are those odds for him to get some sort of finish? I think that's tricky. I think he's going to have to come with a different game plan. Obviously, if the first one didn't work out well for him, he just chased and Volkanovski was able to use angles. He survived a couple scary moments here and there, but for the most part, the fight went the way he hoped for, I believe. The best you can hope for, at least for a Volkanovski fight, right? He countered, stayed on the outside, jabbed, kicked. I think Diego's going to have to do a better job at cutting angles. And two, he's been training a lot in Oklahoma, the University of Oklahoma, his wrestling. Just straight wrestling. No wrestling for MMA, no. Just straight folk-style wrestling, American wrestling. And that's good because I do feel like his jiu-jitsu is so dangerous and yet is so underutilized. I think he can utilize it a lot more. His jiu-jitsu so far, at least in the UFC, because in the regional scene it was different, has been an opportunistic tool, meaning, if he gets caught in a takedown or they get caught in a scramble and there's an opening for submission, then he takes it. But he's not necessarily going out there with a game plan to take you down, pass your guard, get you in a difficult position. He kind of did that a little bit against John Silva, so that's good. But then for the rest of the fight, that was at the beginning. For the rest of the fight, he chose to stand and bang. So I hope that's not the case in this one. I hope that he mixes in his wrestling and his new wrestling skills that he's picked up over the last few months, because that will either help him get points or help him in terms of getting an opportunity to finish Volkanovski on the ground. And if it doesn't do neither of those, at least it opens up his striking on the feet. So I think there's nothing to lose from having a more grappling centered game plan for this rematch. So that's kind of where I lie. I think it's either a decision for Volk or a finish for Diego Lopes, say via knockout or via submission. I do think the knockout is probably more live than the submission. Obviously, Volkanovski is a complete stud in terms of defending submissions, but I think he's still not immune to 100% to Diego Lopes' skills. So, yeah, man, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. I will say this, though, which kind of makes me lean towards Diego. And maybe there's some biases here. I'll admit it. Obviously, Diego, I'm close to. This is somebody that I interview all the time over at Hablemos MMA, and somebody that I've been interviewing before he even entered the UFC, before he even fought in Contender Series. So somebody that I've been covering closely for a long time. But I've used this logic before, and it worked. So I think it could maybe work in this one in terms of um, picking a fight here. Maybe this will help you out yourself if you're having kind of difficulties making a prediction here. But when Israel Adesanya fought Pereira, right, they had fought twice before in kickboxing, lost by decision, lost by knockout. Then they fought in MMA. He lost by knockout. And then in the rematch, which was also in Miami, I also covered live. It was the fourth fight within combat sports. And I picked Israel Adesanya, but we had yet three results that told us that Alex Pereira was the better fighter. So why did I go with Israel Adesanya? Well, I kind of just put it kind of like odds a little bit in terms of, I didn't think at the time Adesanya was past his prime. He was definitely a very game fighter, very skilled fighter. And he had very good moments in all those fights. Maybe not the knockout one, but the decision and the MMA one. He had very good moments, right? And I just found it hard to believe that such a skilled fighter, an elite fighter, world-class fighter that held the UFC title for a long time, literally just lost it, could have fight Alex Pereira 4 times and not win at least one of them. Sure, Alex Pereira could be the better fighter. But you're telling me in 4 fights, Adesanya can't win one? That's kind of what my reasoning was. And I think, no, you roll the dice, and even if Pereira is the better fighter, I think he wins 3 out of 1, or 3 out of 4. So that's kind of where I use the same logic here, Volkanovski already fought 25 minutes against Diego Lopes and was able to stay away from his power. I mean, those, again, some scary moments here and there. But could he do it for 50 minutes? 50 minutes, 37 years of age, inactivity, has been knocked out before, in the last few years was knocked out twice. Man, 50 minutes for a 37-year-old, and I know he's a great, but to survive and not be able to get knocked out by a prime Diego Lopes, I think that's a tough ask, not only for him, but really for anybody in the division. So, yeah, part of me just think it's kind of like a probability and numbers game. I think at some point Diego Lopes is going to catch him. I do think because Diego Lopes is also the fighter that lost the first fight, he's able to make the better adjustments, right? It's clear what he did wrong, whereas Volkanovski, you kind of just have to build on top of what you already did. Sure, you can come up with new things, but you don't know if they're going to work. You already know, being Diego Lopes and being his camp, what does not work, right? So on that end, I do think that Diego Lopes does have an advantage, and that's why I lean toward Diego Lopes. But again, for me, this is a pick'em. I see it very, very, very 50-50 in terms of who's going to win, who's going to lose at UFC 325. Now, in terms of like what happens next, what could a result mean for the UFC, for each fighter, I think this gets very interesting. I think if Volkanovski wins, it's probably the worst result, and I throw the air quotes out there, for the UFC, because I don't think there's that many exciting matchups, and I think although he is a great, I mean, you can't compare in terms of excitement to Diego Lopes. It's hard for anyone, right? Maybe John Silva, right, could match him there, if not beat him. But other than him, I would say those are the 2 most exciting fighters right now at featherweight. So, and he's already had his time at the top. His star power has kind of already maxed out, I think. I don't know if Volkanovski can get any bigger at this point. Whereas Diego Lopes, man, he's been a complete rocket since entering the UFC. And I think his potential, his ceiling, has not been met just yet. And you put a title next to it, man, and so many fun matchups for him. I think that that'll make not only the division very exciting, but the sport in general. And on top of that, the dude speaks perfect Spanish, lives in Mexico, speaks Portuguese perfectly, obviously being his first language. You can easily take him to headline numbered events in Brazil, in Mexico, which is 2 important markets for the promotion. In the United States as well. I mean, the guy's an international star. You can take him to Europe, even though he's not from there. I'm sure people will be stoked to see him fight. And, now he's also learning English, right? We saw him doing some media. He was at the presser speaking English, and that's only going to continue to get better. So speaks 3 languages, appeals to so many markets. I do think the UFC, in terms of what they can gain, they'll gain a little bit more or a lot more, I would say, with Diego Lopes taking the victory here. Also, something very interesting that people I feel like are not contemplating, and I feel like there's been some questions already about it in the last few days. A trilogy bout. If Diego Lopes wins, they'll be 1-1. And there's a reason why Evloev didn't get a title shot. There's a reason why Murphy didn't get a title shot. The UFC is not very fond of them, right? Because they didn't get a title shot because of deservement, right? Because of merit. Because you can, as I mentioned earlier, Diego's over them. I mean, they're over Diego in terms of that area. It was mainly due to them wanting to put on a show, sell tickets, have an exciting fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC passes them up again. Again, that's not what I'm saying. What I want, but knowing how the UFC works, I don't think it'd be crazy if they book a trilogy for International Fight Week, or maybe a trilogy. The UFC has plans to return to Guadalajara, Mexico, or try to make an event again. They were trying to go there for Noche UFC and make it a pay-per-view last year in September, but the arena was not finished, and they just ended up taking the event to San Antonio, I believe. And Diego actually fought there and beat John Silva. So Diego, for those that don't know, lives in Puebla, has been living in Mexico for many, many years, but he does have huge ties with Lobo Jim, Alexa Grasso, Irene Aldana, and he's basically like the jiu-jitsu coach over there. So he spends a lot of time in Guadalajara, and that's kind of like a second home. So he could easily headline that as champion and completely sell out an arena and against Volkanovski. And in a way, it would be kind of fair, right? First fight was in neutral territory, United States. Second, Volkanovski's home. And third, then Diego Lopes' current home, right? So I think if Diego Lopes wins, this could end up being a trilogy bout. We will see. Volk will certainly push for it. And it's hard to deny him, dude. The dude is now a legend. You could say he's a legend in the featherweight division, right? But we'll see what ends up happening. If Volkanovski wins, then I can see Lerone Murphy getting the shot, or I think probably Murphy, to be honest. Evloev hasn't fought in a while. They would probably want him to be a little bit more active and get a fight in before he challenges for a belt, or maybe they give him a little break and then they do a number one contender fight between Murphy and Evloev. That could be an option as well. All right, people. So those are my thoughts on the UFC 325 main event. Again, if you guys have any comments about any prelims or the rest of the main card, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll reply, and we can have a little debate or exchange of information, conversation, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's kind of everything that I think about this bout. My official pick is going to be Diego Lopes. It is on MMA Junkie staff picks. I think he gets it done. I think he gets the knockout. I believe the knockout is also at like a plus 350. That's crazy to me. I think it's a great price. But also the Volkanovski decision at plus 190. I don't think it's wild at all to think that he could do it again in the same fashion. So official pick though, Diego Lopes. And just a little reminder, tomorrow I'm gonna take out a video for best bets. So I'll have some picks for the rest of the card for that in terms of betting it for those that are into it. So anyhow, thank you for your support. Remember, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this card and your prediction for this fight. And yeah, catch you all in the next video.